Welcome to Warhammer 40k 8th edition Battle Report 36, 2,000 points, Chaos Demons of Nurgle versus Necrons. This will be the big rulebook Maelstrom of War mission Contact Lost, and we will be rolling for a random map deployment today. Let's begin by taking a quick look around the board at where the objective markers have been placed. Beginning with this 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker, which is objective marker 4, has been placed up here next to this ruin. Within this middle 2 foot by 2 foot section, objective marker 2 has been placed right here next to this ruin. In this third 2 foot by 2 foot section, objective marker 1 has been placed right here next to this ruin. Over on the other side of the board, objective marker 6 has been placed next to this ruin in this 2 foot by 2 foot section. In the middle 2 foot by 2 foot section, objective marker 5 has been placed right here next to this crater. And finally, in this 2 foot by 2 foot section, objective marker 3 has been placed right here next to this ruin. For this battle report, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will have 9 command points, and the Necrons will have 8 command points. And for a full overview of both armies with all of their war gear, please check out the pregame show, which was released at the beginning of the group. The link for the pregame show will be in the description down below. And so here's the roll for the random map deployment. Rolling a 5, which is Frontline Assault. Since this is the deployment map, Frontline Assault, it is similar to Dawn of War in that we use the long table edges for the deployment zones, but unlike Dawn of War, which is 12 inches from the back edge all the way across, in Frontline Assault we begin at the 6-inch mark on the side, going up to a point across the board until we are 9 inches away from the center, and then back down to the 6-inch mark. And that's the same on both sides. So just for reference, here is the line on the other side of the board going up to a point and then back down to the 6-inch mark. So on a roll of a 1, 2, or 3, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will begin to deploy on the left and the Necrons will deploy on the right. And on a 4, 5, or 6, it'll be the opposite. So Chaos Demons of Nurgle on the right and Necrons on the left. And here's the roll. Rolling a 5, so Chaos Demons of Nurgle will be on the right side, and Necrons will be on the left side. Now on a roll of a 1, 2, or 3, Chaos Demons of Nurgle will begin to deploy first, and on a 4, 5, or 6, the Necrons will begin to deploy first. Getting a 3, so Chaos Demons of Nurgle will begin to deploy first. We will be back after the deployment. The deployment is now finished. The Chaos Demons of Nurgle began to deploy first, but the Necrons finished deploying first, which means that the Necrons will go first unless the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are able to successfully seize the initiative. Let's take a quick look around the board at where each army placed all of their units. Beginning with the Necron deployment, going from left to right, we have the first Ghost Ark with a squad of 10 Necron warriors embarked inside. The first Night Scythe, when this Night Scythe was placed on the battlefield, a squad of 10 Necron warriors and a squad of 10 Immortals was placed on the Tomb World. The second Ghost Ark with a squad of 10 Necron warriors embarked inside. The first Annihilation Barge, the second Annihilation Barge, the Cryptek, squad of 6 Canoptic Wraiths, the Necron Overlord, who is their warlord, and finally the second Night Scythe. Over on the Chaos Demons of Nurgle deployment, going from left to right as well, we have the first squad of 10 Plague Bearers, first Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, first squad of 6 Plague Drones, Great Unclean One armed with Plague Flail, second squad of 10 Plague Bearers, the Warlord Rodigus, Great Unclean One armed with Corruption, second Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, second squad of 6 Plague Drones, and finally, the third squad of 10 Plague Bearers. So now the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will attempt to seize the initiative on a 6, and they fail by rolling a 3. So let's go into Necrons, turn 1. Going into Necrons turn 1, a reminder that the Necrons have 8 command points available and the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have 9 command points available. At the beginning of the turn, the Necrons drew 1 new tactical objective card and they drew Kingslayer. Scored D3 victory points if your opponent's warlord has been destroyed during this or any previous turn. Also at the beginning of the turn, the Necron Overlord will use My Will Be Done on himself, since it has to be placed onto an infantry unit. So going into the movement phase, we will begin with the Black Ghost Arc, which will have the squad of 10 Necron warriors inside disembark out in front. And the warriors will disembark out in front like so. Now the squad of 10 Necron warriors, which just disembarked, will move up the board up to 5 inches. Right to there. Next, the Black Ghost Arc will move up the board up to 12 inches. And it will finish its movement right there. Next, the squad of 10 Immortals on the Tomb World will disembark from the Silver Knight Scythe. So they will finish their disembarkation like so, and now the Immortals will move up the board up to 5 inches. And the Immortals will finish their movement like so. So now the Silver Knight Scythe will pivot up to 90 degrees to its right and move up the board at least 20 inches, but no more than 60. And the Silver Knight Scythe will finish its movement like so. Next, the Black Annihilation Barge is going to move up to 12 inches up the board, and it will finish right there. Now the Silver Annihilation Barge will move up to 12 inches up the board, and it will finish its movement like so. The Cryptex sitting on Objective Marker 2 will remain still. The Silver Ghost Arc will now move up to 12 inches up the board, and it will finish its movement like so. The Black Knight Scythe will now pivot up to 90 degrees to its left and move up the board at least 20 inches, but no more than 60, and it will finish its movement like so. This Canoptic Wraith on the end over here fell over when the table was bumped, but that's okay because the Canoptic Wraiths are going to reposition a little bit to cluster up a little bit more around Objective Marker 1, and they will finish up like so. And finally, the Necron Overlord will remain still. Going into the shooting phase, we will begin with the Silver Ghost Arc, which is just within 24-inch range, and so it will fire its 2 Gauze Flare arrays into Rodriguez. 10 shots, hitting on 3s. Getting 7 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s. Getting 2 wounds. 2 5-up invulnerable saves, failing both. 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 1. So Rodriguez will fall from 18 starting wounds down to 17. So now the Necrons will use the stratagem Methodical Destruction for 2 command points, bring them from 8 down to 6. Use this stratagem after a Sawtech unit from your army has inflicted an unsaved wound on an enemy unit. Add 1 to hit rolls for friendly Sawtech units that target the same enemy unit this phase, and this will be used on Rodriguez. So now the Silver Annihilation Barge will fire everything that it has into Rodriguez. Beginning with the Gauze Cannon, 3 shots, hitting on 2s, getting 3 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passes. 8 shots from the Twin Tesla Destructor, hitting on 2s, getting 8 hits. Thanks to +1 to hit rolls, however, 5s and 6s activate Tesla, which means they get a total of 16 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 5 wounds. 5-up invulnerable saves, and passing all 5. Next, the Black Annihilation Barge will fire everything that it has into Rodriguez, starting with 3 shots from the Gauze Cannon, hitting on 2s, getting 3 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 2, and they are D3 damage apiece, so 2 D3 damage. Of course, rolling double 1s for only 2 damage total, so 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 1. So Rodriguez will fall from 17 wounds down to 16. 8 shots from the Twin Tesla Destructor, hitting on 2s, getting 6 hits, but 2 of them are Tesla, getting 10 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 1, and 1 5-up disgustingly resilient roll, which fails. So Rodriguez will fall from 16 wounds down to 15. Now the Silver Knight Scythe will fire everything that it has into Rodriguez. 8 shots from the 2 Tesla Destructors, hitting on 2s, getting 7 hits, but 2 of them are Tesla, so getting 11 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, and that's a little bit better, getting 7 wounds. 7 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 3 and failing 4. 4 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 3. So Rodriguez will fall from 15 wounds down to 12. The Black Knight Scythe will now fire everything that it has into Rodriguez. 8 shots from the 2 Tesla Destructors, hitting on 2s, getting all 8 hits. wounds. And 5 of them are Tesla, so getting 18 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s. Getting 8 wounds. 8, 5 up and vulnerable saves. Passing 3 and failing 5. 5 up, disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 3 and failing 2. So Rodriguez will fall from 12 wounds down to 10. Now the Black Ghost Arc will fire its 2 Gauze Flare arrays into Rodriguez. 10 shots since he's not in rapid fire range, hitting on 2s. That would have been a really good Tesla hit, getting 8 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 2 wounds. 2 5 up and vulnerable saves, failing both. 2 5 up, disgustingly resilient rolls, and failing both of those as well. So Rodriguez will fall from 10 wounds down to 8. The squad of 10 Immortals are all just within 24-inch range, and they all can see, so they will fire everything that they have into Rodriguez. 10 shots, hitting on 2s, getting 7 hits. Strength 5 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 5 up and vulnerable save, which passes. Finally, the squad of 10 Necron warriors are all within range and all can see, so they will fire everything that they have into Rodriguez. 10 shots, hitting on 2s. Once again, only 7 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s. And all fail to wound. So going into the assault phase, there are no charges to declare, which means going into the fight phase, there are no fights to resolve. And going into the morale phase, there are no morale checks to take. So taking a look at the tactical objective cards, the Necrons failed to complete Kingslayer. But because the Necrons are able to hold up to 6 active tactical objective cards at any one moment, they will hold on to Kingslayer for now. And so at the end of Necron's turn 1, the score currently sits at 0 victory points for the Necrons and 0 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle. Going into Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 1, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have 9 command points available, and the Necrons have 6 command points available. At the beginning of the turn, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle drew 1 new tactical objective card, and they drew Secure Objective 1. Score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 1 at the end of your turn. And Objective Marker 1 is this one right here, currently being held by a squad of Canoptic Raids. Going into the movement phase, Rodriguez is going to move up to 5 inches up the board now that he's down to 8 wounds, and he will also declare an advance. And here's his advance roll, rolling 1 additional inch for up to 6 inches of total movement. And he will finish his movement right there. The Great Unclean One, armed with Plague Flail, will now move up the board up to 7 inches, and he will also declare an advance. And here's the advance roll, rolling for 5 additional inches for 12 inches of total movement. And he will finish his movement right there. This squad of 10 Plague Bearers, sitting on Objective Marker 5, will remain still. This squad of 6 Plague Drones will move up the board up to 10 inches, and they will also declare an advance. And here's their advance roll, rolling for 2 additional inches, but getting to add 1 thanks to their instrument, for 3 inches of advance and up to 13 inches of total movement. Right to there. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will now move up the board up to 12 inches, and he will also declare an advance. And here's the advance roll, rolling for 4 additional inches, for up to 16 inches of total movement. And he will finish his movement like so. Next, this squad of 10 Plague Bearers will move up the board up to 5 inches, and they will also declare an advance. And here's their advance roll, rolling for 4 additional inches for up to 9 inches of total movement. And they will finish their movement like so. The Great Unclean One, armed with Corruption, will now move up the board up to 7 inches. And the Great Unclean One will finish right there. This squad of 6 Plague Drones will now move up the board up to 10 inches. And the Plague Drones will finish up right there. Next, this Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will move up the board up to 12 inches. And it will finish its movement like so. Finally, this squad of 10 Plague Bearers will move up the board up to 5 inches. Right to there. And now the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will use the stratagem Revolting Regeneration for 2 command points, bring them from 9 down to 7. Use this stratagem at the end of your movement phase. Select one of your Nurgle demon units. 1 model in the unit regains D3 lost wounds. If there are no wounded models in the unit, and that unit has suffered any casualties, a single slain model from the unit is returned to play with 1 wound remaining. And this, of course, will be used on Rodriguez. So, D3 lost wounds, and he will get 3 lost wounds back. So, Rodriguez will go back up from 8 wounds to 11. Going into the Psychic phase, we will begin by having Rodriguez attempt to manifest Miasma of Pestilence and Virulent Blessing onto himself. Beginning with Virulent Blessing, which has a warp charge value of 7, and it fails with a 3. So the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will use 1 command point, going from 7 down to 6, for a command reroll to reroll the 1. And here's the reroll, and they roll a 7, so it will pass. And of course, thanks to rolling the 7 for the Psychic test, that activates Deluge of Nurgle, which does a mortal wound onto the nearest enemy unit, which is the Black Knight Scythe. So the Black Knight Scythe will fall from 12 starting wounds down to 11. Now for Miasma of Pestilence, which has a warp charge value of 6, and that will pass with a 6. Now the Great Unclean One, armed with Plague Flail, will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Black Knight Scythe because it is slightly closer than the Silver Knight Scythe, and then the Great Unclean One will attempt to manifest Nurgle's Rot, which, if successful, will go on to both Knight Scythes as they are both within 7 inches. So beginning with Smite, which has a warp charge value of 5, and it fails with a 4. Now for Nurgle's Rot, which has a warp charge value of 7, and that will pass with an 8. Beginning with the Wounded Black Knight Scythe on a 4-up, which will not go off, and then on the Silver Knight Scythe on a 4-up, which also won't go off. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with Wings will now attempt to manifest Smite onto the Black Knight Scythe, as it is the closest enemy unit within 18 inches and also visible. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and it passes with an 8. So it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 2 mortal wounds. So the Black Knight Scythe will fall from 11 wounds down to 9. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with Wings will now attempt to manifest Fleshy Abundance onto Rodigus. And Fleshy Abundance has a warp charge value of 5, and that will pass with a 10. So it will regenerate D3 wounds, and it will regenerate 2 wounds. So Rodigus will go back up from 11 wounds to 13. Finally, the Great Unclean One, armed with Corruption, will simply attempt to manifest Smite onto the squad of 10 Necron warriors because they are slightly closer than the Ghost Arc. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 7, and it fails with a 6. Going into the shooting phase, we will begin by having Rodigus fire his streams of brackish filth onto the Black Knight Scythe. And it is an assault weapon, so he can fire it even though he advanced. So 2 D6 shots, getting 9 shots. Strength 7 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s, but getting to add 1 to wound rolls, so actually wounding on 2s. And fails can be rerolled, but don't have to be, so the 2s can be kept, and that is 9 wounds. So getting all 9 wounds. Minus 3 AP, so 9 6-up armor saves, passing 1 and failing 8. So this Knight Scythe will fall from 9 wounds down to 1. The Great Unclean One, armed with Plague Flail, will now fire his Plague Flail into the Black Knight Scythe. It is an assault weapon, so it can be fired even though he advanced, but that means he subtracts 1 because he advanced, and also subtracts 1 from hit rolls thanks to firing against a flyer. So 3 shots with the Plague Flail, hitting on 5s, rerolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince. And because it is now the shooting phase, Chaos Demons of Nurgle will use 1 command point, going from 6 down to 5, for a command reroll to reroll the 2 as well. So here's the rerolls, and both still fail. Strength 7 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on a 3, and it wounds. Minus 3 AP, so 1 6-up armor save, which fails. And because this could result in First Blood, the Necrons will use 1 command point, going from 6 down to 5, for a command reroll to reroll the 3. And here's the reroll, and they still fail the armor save. So that will finish off the final wound from the Knight Scythe, and does it crash and burn on a 6? And it does not. So the Black Knight Scythe will lose its final wound and be killed off for First Blood. Next, 2 of these 6 Plague Drones, the Demonic Icon and the Sergeant, are within 12-inch range to fire their Death's Heads into the Silver Knight Scythe. 4 shots, hitting on 6s, rerolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince, failing to hit. Finally, this squad of Plague Drones will fire all of their Death's Heads, except for this one in the back corner, because he's too far away, into the Black Ghost Arc. 10 shots, hitting on 5 since they advanced, rerolling 1s. And a good thing for rerolling 1s, getting 1 hit, 4 misses, and 5 rerolls. And I apologize, that squad did not advance, so they were hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s. Not that it mattered, as they didn't roll any 4s, so still just getting the 1 hit and 5 rerolls. But that means that the rerolls will hit on 4-ups, and getting 2 more hits, for 3 hits total. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, rerolling 1s, getting 2 wounds. No AP, so 2 4-up armor saves, passing 1 and failing 1. And it's only 1 damage apiece, so Quantum Shielding will not help. So the Black Ghost Arc will fall from 14 starting wounds down to 13. Going into the assault phase, there are 3 charges to declare, first of which will be the Great Unclean One armed with Corruption, declaring a charge into the squad of 10 Necron warriors, Demon Prince of Nurgle with Wings, declaring a multi-charge into the squad of 10 Necron warriors and the Black Ghost Arc. The Ghost Arc will be the primary target. And finally, this squad of 6 Plague Drones declaring a charge solely into the Black Ghost Arc. And we will begin with the Great Unclean One. 20 shots from the Necron warriors and their Gauze Flares, hitting on 6s, getting 3 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, and failing to wound. Now for the charge range, the Great Unclean One is about 8.5 inches away, but charging through a crater, so he will need to roll a 10 or higher to make it in. And he rolls a 7. So the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use 1 command point going from 5 down to 4, now that it's the assault phase, for a command reroll to reroll the 2. And here's the reroll. And now rolling a 9, but unfortunately that is not enough, so that is a failed charge. Next, we will resolve the Plague Drones. 20 shots from the Ghost Arc and its 2 Gauze Flare arrays, hitting on 6s, getting 5 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, getting 2 wounds. 2 5-up and vulnerable saves, and passing both. And here's the charge range, getting 7 inches, and getting to add 1 thanks to the instrument, and that is barely enough, as they are just under 7 inches away from the hull of the Ghost Arc, which means that after adding 1 from the instrument and subtracting 2 from the crater, they will get 6 inches of charge, which gets them just within an inch. And so they will finish their charge like so. So finally, we will resolve the Demon Prince, and he only has to suffer Overwatch from the warriors since the Ghost Arc is now engaged. 20 shots hitting on 6s, getting 2 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, and failing to wound. And here's the charge range, getting 6 inches. And that will definitely not be enough since he doesn't get to add to his charge range. So that is a failed charge. So now we will resolve the only fight between the Plague Drones and the Ghost Arc, with the Plague Drones going first. And first they will pile in, and all 6 will be able to fight. 7 attacks from their Plague Swords, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, getting 3 hits and 1 re-roll, thanks to the Demon Prince. And here's the re-roll, getting a 4th hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, re-rolling fails, getting 1 wound and 3 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls, still failing to wound. No AP, so 1 4-up armor save, which passes. 24 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, getting 10 hits and 3 re-rolls. And here's the 3 re-rolls, getting 1 more hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, re-rolling all fails. And here's the re-rolls, getting 5 wounds total, with 3 of them being 2 damage and 2 of them being 3 damage, thanks to Locus of Virulence. So starting with the 3 4-up armor saves against the 2 damage attacks, passing 1, failing 2, and Quantum Shielding will ignore on 1s, and failing to ignore both, and then 2 4-up armor saves against the 3 damage attacks, and passing both of those. So 4 damage will go through, which will drop the Ghost Arc from 13 wounds down to 9. And now the Ghost Arc will attack back, 3 attacks hitting on 6s, failing to hit. Going into the morale phase, there are no morale checks to take. And so taking a look at the tactical objective cards, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle failed to complete Secure Objective 1, but they will hold on to it. And so at the end of Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 1, the score currently sits at 1 victory point for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle, thanks to First Blood, and 0 victory points for the Necrons. Going into Necrons turn 2, a reminder that the Necrons have 5 command points available, and the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have 4 command points available. A reminder that the Necrons are holding on to the tactical objective card Kingslayer from the previous turn, and since they are currently holding 3 objective markers, they drew 3 new tactical objective cards, and they drew Dust and Ashes. When this tactical objective is generated, nominate a Necron character from your army, score 1 victory point. At the end of the game if this character is alive and on the battlefield. And that will be the Overlord, who is the Warlord. Blood and Guts, score 1 victory point if an enemy unit was destroyed during the fight phase this turn. If 3 or more enemy units were destroyed during the fight phase this turn, score D3 victory points instead. And No Prisoners, score 1 victory point if an enemy unit was destroyed during your turn. If between 3 and 5 enemy units were destroyed during your turn, score D3 victory points instead. If 6 or more enemy units were destroyed during your turn, score D3 plus 3 victory points instead. Also, at the beginning of the turn, the Overlord will place My Will Be Done onto himself, since it has to be placed onto an infantry unit. Going into the movement phase, we will begin by having the squad of 10 Necron warriors left on the Tomb World disembark from the Silver Knight Scythe. And the warriors will finish their disembarkation like so. And now they will move up to 5 inches towards the Canoptic Raids. And they will finish their movement like so. Now the Silver Knight Scythe will pivot up to 90 degrees to its left and move up the board at least 20 inches but no more than 60. And it will finish its movement like so. The Overlord will now move up to 5 inches closer to the Necron warriors. And the Overlord will finish its movement like so. This squad of Canoptic Raids will back up a little bit. And they will finish like so. I forgot to do it at the beginning of the turn, so we'll do it now. Thanks to Living Metal, the Black Ghost Ark will regain 1 lost wound and go back up from 9 wounds to 10. And now the Ghost Ark will fall back out of combat with the Plague Drones up to 12 inches. Right to there. This squad of 10 Necron warriors will reposition up the board a couple of inches. And they will finish like so, making sure to stay over an inch away from any enemy units. And now the squad of 10 Immortals will move up the board up to 5 inches. And they will finish their movement like so. Now the squad of 10 Necron warriors embarked within the Silver Ghost Ark will disembark out in front. And they will finish their disembarkation like so. Next, the Ghost Ark will reposition slightly, right to there. The Black Annihilation Barge will now move over on the board up to 12 inches. Right to there. The Silver Annihilation Barge will now move over on the board up to 12 inches. Right to there. And finally, this Cryptek will move a couple of inches over to the left. Right to there. Going into the shooting phase, we will begin by having the Black Ghost Ark fire its 2 Gauss Flare arrays in rapid fire range into the squad of 6 Plague Drones it just left combat with. 20 shots hitting on 3s, getting 15 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, getting 5 wounds. 5 up and vulnerable saves, passing 1, failing 4, and 1 damage piece, so 4 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, and failing all 4. And so 1 regular Plague Drone in the back will go down. So now the Necrons will use the stratagem Methodical Destruction for 2 command points, bring them from 5 down to 3. Use this stratagem after a Sawtech unit from your army has inflicted an unsaved wound on an enemy unit. Add 1 to hit rolls for friendly Sawtech units that target the same enemy unit this phase. And this stratagem will be placed onto the squad of Plague Drones. So next, this Silver Knight Scythe will fire everything that it has into the squad of Plague Drones. 8 shots from the 2 Tesla Destructors hitting on 2s, getting all 8 hits. And thanks to adding 1 to hit rolls, both 5s and 6s activate Tesla, so actually getting 18 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, getting 16 wounds. 16 5 up and vulnerable saves, passing 3 and failing 13. 13 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 4 and failing 9. So that will kill off the 2 other regular Plague Drones, and it will also drop the instrument from 4 starting wounds down to 3. Next, the Silver Ghost Ark will fire its 2 Gauss Flare arrays in rapid fire range into the squad of 3 Plague Drones. 20 shots hitting on 2s, getting 17 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, getting 8 wounds. 8 5 up and vulnerable saves, passing 5, failing 3. 1 damage piece, so 3 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, and failing all 3. So that will finish off the instrument. Now the squad of 10 Necron warriors right next to the Silver Ghost Ark, the squad that's further away, will fire their Gauss Flares in rapid fire range into the squad of 2 Plague Drones. 20 shots hitting on 2s, getting 17 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 2. 1 damage piece, so 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 1. So the Sergeant will fall from 4 starting wounds down to 3. Now the squad of 10 Immortals will fire rapid fire range into the squad of 2 Plague Drones. 20 shots, hitting on 2s, getting 15 hits. Strength 5 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 4s, getting 12 wounds. 12 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 5 and failing 7. 7 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 4 and failing 3. So that will finish off the Sergeant, leaving just the demonic icon left alive from the Plague Drone squad. Now the closer 10-man Necron Warrior squad will fire rapid fire into the lone Plague Drone. 20 shots, hitting on 2s, getting 17 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, getting 6 wounds. 6 5-up invulnerable saves, failing all 6. 1 damage piece, so 6 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 2 but failing 4. And because of that, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use 1 command point going from 4 down to 3 for a command reroll to reroll the 4. And here's the reroll. And they pass, so only taking 3 damage. So the demonic icon will fall from 4 wounds down to 1 left. So now both Annihilation Barges will fire everything that they have into the Great Unclean One armed with Corruption. And we will begin with the Black Annihilation Barge, as they have to be done separately. So, Gauze Cannon from the Black Annihilation Barge. 3 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 3 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails. And it will do D3 damage, and it will do 1 damage. So 1 5-up disgustingly resilient roll, which also fails. So this Great Unclean One will fall from 18 starting wounds down to 17. 8 shots from the Twin Tesla Destructor, hitting on 3s, getting all 8 hits, but no Tesla. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, failing all 3, and 1 damage piece, so 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and failing all 3 of those as well. So the Great Unclean One will fall from 17 wounds down to 14. Now for the Silver Annihilation Barge, beginning with the Gauze Cannon. 3 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passes. 8 shots from the Twin Tesla Destructor, hitting on 3s, getting 5 hits, but one of them will activate Tesla, so getting 7 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 4 wounds. 4 5-up invulnerable saves, failing all 4. 1 damage piece, so 4 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 3 and failing 1. So this Great Unclean One will fall from 14 wounds down to 13. Finally, this squad of 10 Necron Warriors will fire everything that they have into this squad of 6 Plague Drones. Only 2 of the Necron Warriors are within rapid fire range, however. So 12 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 7 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s. 3 wounds, 3 fails, and 1 cocked dice. And here's the cocked dice, failing to wound. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 1, failing 2, and 1 damage piece, so 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and failing both of those as well. So 1 regular Plague Drone in the back will fall from 4 starting wounds down to 2. Going into the assault phase for Necrons turn 2, we have 2 charges to declare, first of which will be squad of 10 Necron Warriors back here, declaring a charge into the lone Plague Drone, and second will be the squad of 10 Immortals charging into the lone Plague Drone. And so we will begin with the Immortals. 2 shots from Overwatch from the Death's Heads, hitting on 6s, getting 2 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s and failing to wound. So here's the charge range from the Immortals, getting 7 inches. And all 10 Immortals are now locked in combat. So now we will resolve the charge from the Warriors. And here's the charge range, getting 8 inches. And so all 10 Warriors are now locked in combat. They did technically have to charge partially through the crater, but even after subtracting 2 inches from their charge range, 6 inches was still more than enough for them all to make it in. And the Warriors made sure to stay over 3 inches away from the Demon Prince of Nurgle, so that way he could not heroically intervene. So now going into the fight phase, we will begin with a squad of 10 Immortals. They are all already within range to be able to fight. 10 attacks from the Immortals, hitting on 3s. Getting 8 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s. Getting 3 wounds. 3, 5 up and vulnerable saves. Passing 1 and failing 2. 1 damage piece, so 2, 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls. And passing both. So the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are now going to use the stratagem counteroffensive for 2 command points, bringing them from 3 down to 1 left. This stratagem is used right after an enemy unit that charge has fought. Select one of your own eligible units and fight with the next. And obviously this will be used with the 1 Plague Drone, which somehow survived. All of the Plague Drone's attacks will go onto the squad of warriors, since they still need to attack in order to try to whittle them down. So beginning with the 1 Plague Sword attack, hitting on a 4, rerolling 1s, getting a hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on a 4, rerolling fails, getting a reroll. And here's the reroll. Getting a wound, no AP, so 1 4-up armor save, which fails, so 1 warrior will go down. And now for 4 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting a hit and a reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s, getting a wound, no AP, so 1 4-up armor save, which fails. So 1 more Necron warrior will go down. But now the 8 remaining warriors will fight against the Plague Drone, and they all are in range. 8 attacks from the warriors, hitting on 3s. Getting 6 hits and 2 misses, but the Necrons are going to use 1 command point, going from 3 down to 2, for a command reroll to reroll the 2. And here's the reroll. Getting a 7th hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s. Getting 2 wounds. 2 5 up and vulnerable saves. Failing 1 and passing 1. And 1 damage apiece. So 1 5 up disgustingly resilient roll, which fails. But the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will use their last command point, going from 1 down to 0, for a command reroll, since they haven't used a command reroll in this fight phase so far, to reroll the 3. And so here's the reroll. And it passes with a 6. So that Plague Drone will survive. So now going into the morale phase, this Plague Drone squad lost 5 models this turn, and they have a leadership of 7. And unfortunately for them, they are over 6 inches away from the Great Unclean One, which means they cannot take advantage of the Greater Demon Special rule and use a leadership of 10. But they do have the Demonic Icon left. And so what this means is that on a roll of a 3-up, the final Plague Drone is removed as a casualty and that squad is killed off. On a 2, they pass and nothing happens. And on a roll of a 1, they pass and get a slain model back. And so here's their morale check roll, and they roll a 4. And they have no command points left for a reroll, so that will kill off the final Plague Drone. And so the squad of 8 Necron warriors also lost 2 models this turn. However, they have leadership of 10, and so it is impossible for them to fail. So taking a look at the tactical objective cards, the Necrons failed to complete Kingslayer. Since the game is not over, they failed to complete Dust and Ashes. Thanks to that Plague Drone surviving all the way up until the morale phase, the Necrons failed to complete Blood and Guts. But because that lone Plague Drone was killed off in the morale phase, the Necrons will get 1 victory point for no prisoners. And the Necrons will hold on to the other 3 objective cards. And so at the end of Necrons turn 2, the score currently sits at 1 victory point for the Necrons and 1 victory point for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle. So going into Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 2, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have 0 command points available, and the Necrons have 2 command points available. At the beginning of the turn, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Nurgle held onto the tactical objective card, Secure Objective 1 from the previous turn. And since the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are currently controlling 3 objective markers, they drew 3 new tactical objective cards, and they drew Area Denial. Score 1 victory point if there are no enemy models within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield at the end of your turn. If there are no enemy models within 12 inches of the center of the battlefield at the end of your turn, score D 3 victory points instead. Master the Warp. Score 1 victory point if you manifested or denied a psychic power during this turn. If you manifested or denied 3 or more psychic powers, score D 3 victory points instead. And Secure Objective 3. Score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 3 at the end of your turn. And a reminder, of course, that Objective Marker 1 is this one right here, currently being held by a squad of Canoptic degrays. And objective marker 3 is this one right here, currently being controlled by a squad of Plague Bearers. So going into the movement phase, for Chaos Demons of Nurgle, turn 2, this squad of 10 Plague Bearers will remain still. This squad of 10 Plague Bearers sitting on objective marker 5 will also remain still. And this squad of 10 Plague Bearers sitting on objective marker 6 will also remain still. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings is going to move 12 inches over towards the Silver Night Scythe. And it will finish its movement right here, about 4.5 inches away from the base of the Silver Night Scythe. This squad of 6 Plague Drones is going to move up to 10 inches up the board. And the Plague Drones are going to move like so, with the wounded one being right here in the middle. The Great Unclean One, armed with Plague Flail, is now going to move up to 7 inches up the board. And he will finish like so. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings is going to move up to 12 inches up the board. And he will finish his movement like so. The Great Unclean One, armed with Corruption, will now move up the board up to 7 inches. And the Great Unclean One will finish right there. Finally, Rodigus will move up to 7 inches over on the board. And Rodigus will finish his movement right there. So going into the Psychic phase, we will begin with Rodigus attempting to manifest Miasma of Pestilence onto this Demon Prince, and then Rodigus will attempt to manifest Virulent Blessing onto this Demon Prince. So first, Miasma of Pestilence, which has a warp charge value of 6, and it passes with a 7. Thanks to Deluge of Nurgle, that will do 1 mortal wound to the nearest enemy unit, which is this squad of 8 Necron warriors. Now for Virulent Blessing onto the other Demon Prince, which needs a 7, and that passes with a 9. So once again, 1 more warrior from this squad, which is now down to 7, will go down. So now there are 6 models left alive in the squad. This Demon Prince will now attempt to manifest Smite onto the squad of Immortals. And Smite has a warp charge value of 5, and that fails with a Perils. So we'll do D3 mortal wounds to himself, and it will do 2. So this Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will fall from 8 starting wounds down to 6. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will now attempt to manifest Smite onto the Night Scythe. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and it passes with a 9. So we'll do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 1 mortal wound. So the Night Scythe will fall from 12 starting wounds down to 11. Next, the Great Unclean One, armed with Plague Flail, will fire his Stream of Corruption and Smite into this squad of 10 warriors. So Stream of Corruption has warp charge value of 5, and it passes with a 6. And because there are 10 models in the squad, the Psychic power does D6 mortal wounds instead of D3, and it will do 6 mortal wounds. So 6 warriors are killed off. And now for Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 7, and that passes with an 8. And it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 2 mortal wounds. So 2 more warriors will go down. Finally, in the Psychic phase, the Great Unclean One, armed with Corruption, will attempt to manifest Smite onto the squad of 6 warriors, and then he will also attempt to manifest Nurgle's Rot, which if successful will go onto all enemy units within 7 inches, so that will be the squad of 6 warriors, the squad of 10 warriors, and the squad of 10 immortals. Starting with Nurgle's Rot, which has a warp charge value of 7, and it will pass with an 8. So first, a 4-up on the squad of 6 warriors, which will go off. So we'll do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. So now a 4-up for the Immortals, which will fail, and then a 4-up for the squad of 10 warriors, which will go off, and it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 2 mortal wounds. So 2 warriors will be killed off from the squad of 10. And actually now, because those 3 warriors from the squad of 6 were killed off, now the Immortals are actually closer to the Great Unclean One than the squad of warriors are, which means Smite now has to be manifested onto the Immortals. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 8, and it's definitely not going to pass, getting a 4, so it fails. Going into the shooting phase, we will begin with Rodigus firing his streams of brackish filth into the Silver Night Scythe, because he is still just within 7 inches of the base of the Night Scythe. So 2 D6 shots, getting 9 shots. This weapon automatically hits, so 9 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s, re-rolling all fails. Getting 4 wounds and 5 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls, getting 7 wounds total. Minus 3 AP, so 7. 6-up armor saves. failing all 7, and 1 damage apiece, so the Night Scythe will fall from 11 wounds down to 4. Now the Great Unclean One, armed with Plague Flail, will fire the Plague Flail into the squad of 2 warriors. 3 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 3 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s, getting 2 wounds. And unfortunately for the Necrons, they are minus 3 AP, 2 damage apiece, and the damage does carry over from model to model with this particular weapon. Not that that matters, because the warriors only have 1 wound apiece anyways, but even if just 1 had wounded, that would be enough to finish off the squad. So these 2 warriors are killed off, and that squad is destroyed. Finally, in the shooting phase, this squad of plague drones will fire. These 3, right here in the squad, will be able to fire at the Overlord because he is the closest enemy unit within 12 inches and also visible, while this plague drone right here will have to fire at the Canoptic Rays because they are closer than the Overlord. So starting with the 2 shots into the Canoptic Rays, hitting on 4s, getting 2 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, rerolling 1s, getting 1 wound. 1 3-up invulnerable save, which passes. And now for the 6 shots into the Overlord, hitting on 4s, getting 1 hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on a 5, rerolling 1s, and getting a 6. So it wounds. No AP, so 1 3-up armor save, which passes. Going into the assault phase, we have multiple charges to declare. First, of course, will be the Great Unclean One with Plague Flail declaring a charge into the Overlord. Second will be the squad of 6 Plague Drones declaring a multi-charge into the Overlord and the Canoptic Raids, with the Overlord being the primary target since he is closer. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with Wings will declare a charge into the Night Scythe. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with Wings will declare a multi-charge into the squad of Immortals and the squad of 3 warriors, with the Immortals being the primary target since they are closer. Rodriguez will declare a multi-charge into the 3 warriors and the squad of Immortals, with the warriors being the primary target since they are closer. And the Great Unclean One, armed with Corruption, will declare a multi-charge into the squad of 10 Immortals and the squad of 8 warriors in the back, with the Immortals being the primary target. And we will begin with the charge from the Great Unclean One, armed with Plague Flail. And here's the charge range, getting 10 inches. And so the Great Unclean One will make it into combat with the Overlord, and I know his crushing bulk is supposed to be done at the end of the charge phase, but we will do it now so that 1, we don't forget, but 2, because it won't affect any charges, since the Overlord is a multi-wound model. And on a 4-up, he suffers a mortal wound, and he does not. So now for the charge from the Plague Drones. And here's their charge range, adding 1 thanks to their instrument, so getting a total of 5 inches of charge. And that will not be enough to make it in, so that is a failed charge. Now for the charge from this Demon Prince into the Silver Night Scythe. 8 shots in Overwatch from the 2 Tesla Destructors, hitting on 6s, and failing to hit. And here's the charge range, getting 9 inches, more than enough. And the Demon Prince will finish its charge like so. Next, we will resolve the charge from the Great Unclean One, armed with Corruption. Starting with 20 shots worth of Overwatch from the Immortals, hitting on 6s, getting 6 hits. Strength 5 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 2 wounds, 2 5-up invulnerable saves, failing both, and 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and failing both of those as well. So the Great Unclean One will fall from 13 wounds down to 11. Now for 16 shots from the 8 Necron warriors, hitting on 6s, getting 3 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound, 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passes. And now for charge range, getting 4 inches. And since he is charging through a crater, that will not be enough, so that is a failed charge. So because of that, Rodriguez will change his charge, which he is allowed to do, and he will charge only into the squad of 3 warriors because he can't actually get into combat with the Immortals anymore, because the Great Unclean One with Corruption is blocking his way. 6 shots of Overwatch, hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on a 5 and fails to wound. And here's the charge range, getting 8 inches. And that will not be enough since he is also charging through a crater, so that is also a failed charge. So finally, we will resolve the charge from the Demon Prince into both the Immortals and the squad of 3 warriors. Overwatch from the warriors first, 6 shots hitting on 6s, getting 3 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. -1 AP, so 1 4-up armor save, which passes. 20 shots from the Immortals, hitting on 6s, getting 4 hits. Strength 5 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. -2 AP, so 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails, and 1 5-up disgustingly resilient roll, which also fails. So the Demon Prince will fall from 6 wounds down to 5. Now for charge range, getting 9 inches. And so the Demon Prince will make it into combat with both. Going into the fight phase, for Chaos Demons of Nurgle, turn 2, we will begin with the Great Unclean One, armed with Plague Flail, against the Overlord. And he will be attacking with his Doomsday Bell, so 5 attacks base, hitting on 2s, getting 4 hits. Strength 8 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, getting 3 wounds, and one of them is a 6 for Locus of Virulence. So the wound roll of a 6 is D3 plus 1 damage, while the 3 and the 4 are simply D3 damage. -1 AP, so 1 4-up armor or invulnerable save against the D3 plus 1 damage, which will go through, and the Necrons will elect to use a command point going from 2 down to 1 left for a command reroll to reroll the 3. And here's the reroll. And it still fails, so that will go through, and then 2 4-up saves against the D3 damage. And one of those will go through as well. So in total, it will be 2d3 plus 1 damage. So here's the 2d3, rolling a 1 and a 2, which will be a total of 4 damage. So the Overlord will fall from 5 starting wounds down to 1. And now the Great Unclean One will attack with his Attendant's Claws and Teeth, which will do d6 additional attacks, doing 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, getting 5 hits. Strength 2 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 6s, rerolling 1s, and failing to wound. Next, this Demon Prince of Nurgle with Wings is going to place all of his attacks onto the squad of 3 warriors. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, thanks to himself, getting 5 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting all 7 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s, getting 6 wounds. -2 AP, so 6 6-up armor saves. Wow, passing 3 and failing 3. So exactly what was needed to completely finish off the squad of warriors. Finally, from the charging units on Nurgle's side, this Demon Prince of Nurgle with Wings will now place his attacks onto the Night Scythe. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, thanks to himself, getting 5 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls. And this one was a 3 before it got knocked over, so all 7 hit. Strength 7 against Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s, but thanks to Virulent Blessing, actually wounding on 2s. So getting 6 wounds, and thanks to Virulent Blessing, the 5s activate Locus of Virulence, which means they will be 3 damage instead of 2. So we have 3 3 damage attacks and 3 2 damage attacks. -2 AP, so starting with 3 5-up armor saves against the 2 damage attacks, passing 1, failing 2, which is 4 damage, which will finish off the Night Scythe. But just to see, here's the 3 5-up armor saves against the 3 damage attacks, and of course, all those passed. But 4 damage still goes through from the 2 damage attacks that were not saved, which will finish off the Night Scythe. And does it crash and burn on a 6? And it does not. So the final 4 wounds from the Night Scythe are removed, and the Night Scythe is killed off. And then the Demon Prince consolidated a couple inches towards all the warriors and immortals. So now the Necrons will have a chance to strike back, beginning with the Overlord, onto the Great Unclean One. 3 attacks from the Overlord with Void Reaper, hitting on 2s, getting 3 hits. This weapon always wounds on 2s, so wounding on 2s, rerolling thanks to his Warlord trait. And here's the rerolls, getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, failing all 3, and they are 3 damage piece, so 9 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 2 and failing 7. So the Great Unclean One will fall from 18 starting wounds down to 11. So finally, the squad of immortals will now pile in and fight against the Demon Prince. And all but one will be able to fight. So 9 attacks, hitting on 4s, thanks to Miasma of Pestilence, getting 5 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, getting 2 wounds. No AP, so 2 3-up armor saves, and passing both. So going into the morale phase, this squad of 8 Necron warriors lost 2 models this turn. They have a leadership of 10, however, so it's impossible for them to fail. So taking a look at the tactical objective cards, Chaos Demons of Nurgle failed to secure objective 1. They did, however, complete area denial, and there are no enemy models within 12 inches of the center of the board. The squad of 8 Necron warriors is just outside the 12-inch mark, so they will get D3 victory points for that. And here's the roll, getting 3 victory points, of course. Chaos Demons of Nurgle also completed Master the Warp, and they manifested at least 3 psychic powers, so they will get D3 victory points for that as well. And here's the roll, and that will give them 2. And the Chaos Demons of Nurgle also completed Secure Objective 3 thanks to a squad of Plague Bearers, so they get 1 victory point for that. And the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will hold on to Secure Objective 1 once again. And so at the end of Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 2, the score currently sits at 7 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle and 1 victory point for the Necrons. Going into Necrons turn 3, a reminder that the Necrons have 1 command point available, and the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have 0 command points available. A reminder that the Necrons held on to Kingslayer, Dust and Ashes, and Blood and Guts from the previous turn, and because the Necrons are currently controlling 3 objective markers, they drew 3 new ones as well, and they drew Witch Hunter, score 1 victory point if at least 1 enemy Psyker was destroyed during this turn, Domination, score D3 plus 3 victory points if you control every objective marker on the battlefield at the end of your turn, and Secure Objective 6, score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 6 at the end of your turn. And Objective Marker 6 is this one right here, currently being controlled by a squad of Plague Bearers. At the beginning of the turn, thanks to Living Metal, the Overlord will go back up from 1 wound to 2. Also at the beginning of the turn, he will use My Will Be Done on himself, since it has to be done on an infantry squad. And once again, thanks to Living Metal, the Ghost Arc will go back up from 10 wounds to 11. Finally, at the beginning of the turn, we also need to resolve Reanimation Protocol roll for the squad of 8 Necron warriors, and they have 2 models that could come back. So rolling 2 dice, looking for 5-ups, and they will get 1 back. So 1 warrior will be brought back, and they are now back up to 9 models. So going into the movement phase, for Necrons turn 3, we will begin by having the squad of 10 Immortals fall back out of combat with the Demon Prince. And they will fall back to here in order to block Nurgle's access from attacking the squad of 9 warriors and blocking their access to objective marker 4. The squad of 9 warriors will now move up the board up to 5 inches, and they will finish their movement like so. The Silver Ghost Arc will now move up the board up to 12 inches, and it will finish like so. The Black Annihilation Barge will now position itself just a little bit closer, right to there, and the Silver Annihilation Barge will also move up an inch or 2, right to there. The Cryptek will remain still. The Black Ghost Arc will now move up the board up to 12 inches, and it will finish like so. The Overlord will remain locked in combat with the Great Unclean One. And finally, the squad of Canoptic Rays will move up the board up to 12 inches to get closer to the Great Unclean One, and they will finish their movement like so. Also at the end of the movement phase, the squad of 9 Necron warriors will get 1 extra chance for Reanimation Protocol on the downed model, thanks to being close enough to a Ghost Arc. So they'll get the model back on a 5-up, and they do not. So going into the shooting phase, we will begin with this Black Ghost Arc, firing everything that it has into the Great Unclean One armed with Corruption. 20 shots, hitting on 3s, hitting 13 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounded on 5s, getting 5 wounds. 5 up and vulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 4. 4 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 2 and failing 2. So the Great Unclean One will fall from 11 wounds down to 9. The Silver Ghost Arc will fire everything that it has in rapid fire range into Rodriguez. 20 shots, hitting on 3s, hitting 14 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounded on 5s, hitting 6 wounds. 6 5 up and vulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 4. 1 damage piece, so 4 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 3. So Rodriguez will fall from 13 wounds down to 10. Now the squad of 9 warriors will fire everything they have in rapid fire range into Rodriguez. 18 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 9 hits and 1 cocked dice. And here's the cocked dice, getting a 10th hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounded on 5s. Once again, another cocked dice, but getting 7 wounds and 1 cocked dice. And here's the cocked dice, getting an 8th wound. 8, 5 up invulnerable saves, passing 2, failing 6. 6, 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 2 and failing 4. So Radagast will fall from 10 wounds down to 6. Now the Silver Annihilation Barge will fire everything that it has into Radagast. 3 shots with the Gauze Cannon, hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 5 up invulnerable save, which fails. It will do D3 damage, doing 1 damage. 1 5 up disgustingly resilient roll, which fails. So Radagast will fall from 6 wounds down to 5. 8 shots from the Twin Tesla Destructor, hitting on 3s. Wow, that's a really good hit. And getting 4 6s, so actually getting 16 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 9 wounds. 9 5 up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 7. 7 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 5 and failing 2. So Radagast will fall from 5 wounds down to 3. Finally, the Black Annihilation Barge will fire everything that it has into Radagast. 3 shots from the Gauze Cannon, hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 5 up invulnerable save, which fails. It does D3 damage, doing 3 damage. 3 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, and failing all 3. And so that will kill off Radagast, which will give the Necrons slay the Warlord. But this does mean that the Twin Tesla Destructor on that Annihilation Barge will go to waste. Going into the Assault phase, we have 1 charge to declare, which is the squad of Canoptic Wraiths charging into the Great Unclean One. And even though the Great Unclean One is locked in combat with the Overlord, he will be able to overwatch because his weapon is able to be fired when he is within an inch of an enemy unit. So 3 shots from the Plague Flail, hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit. Strength 7 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 3 up invulnerable save, which fails, and it is 2 damage. So 1 Canoptic Wraith in the back will fall from 3 wounds down to 1. Now for their charge range, hitting 5 inches. So the Canoptic Wraiths did have to partially charge through a crater, but they still made it in just fine. And so now going into the fight phase, we will begin with the Canoptic Wraiths as they are the only charging unit, and all 6 will be able to attack. 3 attacks apiece with their Vicious Claws for 18 attacks total, hitting on 3s, getting 14 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 5 wounds. 5 5 up invulnerable saves, passing 1, failing 4, but they are 2 damage apiece, so 8 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 2 and failing 6. So the Great Unclean One will fall from 11 wounds down to 5. And now for units that did not charge, beginning with the Overlord. 3 attacks base with Void Reaper, hitting on 2s, getting 3 hits. This weapon always wounds on 2s, so getting 3 wounds. 3 5 up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 1, but it is 3 damage apiece, so 3 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, failing 2 and 1 cocked dice. So here's a reroll on the cocked dice, which still fails. So the Great Unclean One will fall from 5 wounds down to 2 left, but that does mean the Great Unclean One will get a chance to strike back. So now that the Great Unclean One is down to 2 wounds, he only has 3 attacks base with his Doomsday Bell. So 3 attacks, hitting on 2s, getting 3 hits. And now that he's down to 2 wounds, he only has a base strength of 5, but gets +1 from the Doomsday Bell, so strength 6 versus toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, getting 3 wounds, and 2 of them are 6s, which will be +1 damage apiece if they go through, -1 AP. So first, 1 4-up save against the D3 damage, which does save, and now 2 4-up saves against the D3 +1 damage attacks, passing 1 and failing 1. And so the Necrons will have to use their last command point, going from 1 down to 0, for a command reroll to reroll the 1, because if that one was to go through, it would be D3 +1, which is an automatic minimum of 2, which would kill off the Overlord. So here is the reroll. And they do save it. The Great Unclean One still has his Attendant's Claws and Teeth, and so it will do D6 attacks, and it will do 4 attacks, hitting on 2s, getting 3 hits. Also, I don't know if I mentioned it at the beginning when the Great Unclean One struck back, but all of these attacks are of course going on to the Overlord to try to kill him off for Slay the Warlord. So if I didn't mention that before, I apologize, but all of these attacks are going on the Overlord. So 3 hits at Strength 2 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 6s, rerolling 1s. Getting 1 wound, which is Locus of Violence, so is 2 damage if it goes through. No AP, 1 3-up armor save, and it saves. So the Overlord will survive. So going into the morale phase, for Necrons turn 3, there are no morale checks to take. So taking a look at the tactical objective cards, the Necrons did successfully complete Kingslayer, and so that is worth D3 victory points, and it is worth 2. The game is not over, so they did not complete Dust and Ashes. The Necrons failed to kill off the 1 Great Unclean Ones. They did not complete Blood and Guts. Thanks to killing Rodagust, however, the Necrons did complete Witch Hunter for 1 victory point. The Necrons do not hold every objective marker, so they do not complete Domination, and the Necrons are not controlling objective marker 6, so they failed to complete Secure objective marker 6. And at this point, the Necrons will throw Domination away. And so at the end of Necrons turn 3, the score currently sits at 5 victory points for the Necrons thanks to Slay the Warlord, and 7 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle. Going into Chaos Demons of Nurgle, turn 3, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have 0 command points available, and the Necrons also have 0 command points available. A reminder that the Chaos Demons of Nurgle held on to Secure Objective 1 from the previous turn, and the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are currently controlling 3 objective markers. They drew 3 new tactical objective cards, and they drew Advance, score 1 victory point if no unit from your army is within your deployment zone at the end of your turn, Cycle of Life, score 1 victory point if an enemy infantry unit was destroyed during this turn. If an enemy infantry unit was destroyed by one of your Nurgle demon units during your turn, score D3 victory points instead. And Secure Objective 4, score 1 victory point if you control objective marker 4 at the end of your turn. And objective marker 1 is this one right here, currently being held by a squad of Canoptic Wraiths. And objective marker 4 is this one right here, currently being held by a squad of Immortals and a squad of Warriors. Going into the movement phase, this squad of 10 Plague Bearers sitting on objective marker 3 will remain still. This squad of 10 Plague Bearers sitting on objective marker 5 will also remain still. This squad of 10 Plague Bearers sitting on objective marker 6 will also remain still. The Great Unclean One, who is down to 2 wounds, will remain locked in combat with the Overlord and the Canoptic Wraiths. This squad of 6 Plague Drones will move up the board up to 10 inches, and the Plague Drones will finish their movement like so. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will now move up to 12 inches up the board, and it will finish its movement like so. Next, the Great Unclean One armed with Corruption will reposition itself an inch or 2, and it will finish its movement like so. Finally, this Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will move a couple inches over on the board, and it will finish its movement like so, making sure to stay over an inch away from any enemy models. Going into the Psychic phase for Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 3, we will begin with this Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings who will attempt to manifest Fleshy Abundance onto the Great Unclean One armed with Plague Flail, who is down to 2 wounds because he is within 18 inches. And Fleshy Abundance has a warp charge value of 5, and it passes with a 7. And it will bring back D3 wounds, and it will bring back 3 wounds. So this Great Unclean One will go back up from 2 wounds to 5. The Great Unclean One, armed with Corruption, will now attempt to manifest Stream of Corruption onto the squad of Immortals. And Stream of Corruption has a warp charge value of 5, and they roll a 3 and a cocked dice. So here's the reroll on the cocked dice, and they roll a 6, so it will pass. And because the Immortals have 10 models, it will do D6 mortal wounds, and it will do just 1 mortal wound. So 1 immortal will go down. So now the Great Unclean One, armed with Corruption, will attempt to manifest Smite onto the squad of Immortals. And Smite has a warp charge value of 5, and it passes with a 9. And it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 2 mortal wounds. So now the second Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will attempt to manifest Smite onto the squad of Immortals. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and it passes with a 10. So it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. so 3 immortals will go down. The Great Unclean One armed with Plague Flail will now attempt to manifest Nurgle's Rot. And Nurgle's Rot has a warp charge value of 7. And it passes with a 7. So starting with the Overlord on a 4-up, and it will go off, and so it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 2 mortal wounds. And so that will remove the final 2 wounds from the Necron Overlord, and the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will achieve Slay the Warlord. And now does it go off on the Canoptic Wraiths on a 4-up? And it does. So it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. So that will kill off the wounded Canoptic Wraith, who's down to 1 wound, and everyone then fell over. And it will also take 2 wounds off of this Canoptic Wraith in the back, so he will fall from 3 starting wounds down to 1. Finally, the Great Unclean One will attempt to manifest Smite onto the squad of Canoptic Wraiths. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 7, and it passes with a 7. So it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do just 1 mortal wound. And so that will finish off the wounded Canoptic Wraith in the back. Going into the shooting phase, the only unit that can fire this turn is the Great Unclean One with his Plague Flail into the Canoptic Wraiths, because he can fire even if he's within an inch of an enemy unit, and even if the target is within an inch of a friendly unit. So 3 shots from the Plague Flail, hitting on 3s, getting 3 hits. Since he's back up to 5 wounds, he has a base strength of 6, so strength 6 versus toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, and all fail to wound, no rerolls. So going into the assault phase, we have multiple charges to declare, first of which is this squad of plague drones charging into the Canoptic Wraiths. This Great Unclean One will declare a charge into the Immortals, and then based off of his charge, we will determine whether or not the Demon Princes should charge. So let's actually begin quick with this Great Unclean One, because that will determine where the Demon Princes go. And since he is charging only into the Immortals, and there's only 4 Immortals left, 8 shots worth of Overwatch, hitting on 6s. And failing to hit. And the Great Unclean One is charging through a crater, so of course subtracting 2 from the charge roll, but getting 9 inches for 7 inches total of charge, which will be more than enough. So the Great Unclean One will make it into combat like so. And because the Great Unclean One was able to make it into combat and therefore get out of the way, this Demon Prince right here will now declare a multi-charge into the Immortals and the squad of 9 warriors. So the Immortals are not able to Overwatch because they're already locked, but the 9 warriors will be able to Overwatch. However, 3 of them are not in rapid fire range, so 15 shots total, hitting on 6s, getting 3 hits. Strength 4 versus toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, getting 2 wounds. Minus 1 AP, so 2 4-up armor saves, and failing both. So this Demon Prince will fall from 8 starting wounds down to 6. And so here's the charge range, getting 7 inches. And the Demon Prince was just within 8 inches of the Immortals, so he will make it into combat. And because of that, this Demon Prince will now charge the Ghost Arc. 20 shots from the Overwatch, hitting on 6s. Getting 1 hit. Strength 4 versus toughness 6 means wounding on a 5, and it wounds. Minus 1 AP, so 1 4-up armor save, which passes. Also, I think I forgot to do the Disgusting Resilient from the other Demon Prince. So 2 Disgustingly Resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 1. So this Demon Prince will actually go back up from 6 wounds to 7. And so now here's the charge range, getting 11 inches. And this Demon Prince is now locked in combat. Finally, we need to resolve the charge from these Plague Drones into the Canoptic Wraiths. No Overwatch, so here's the charge distance, rolling 8 inches. And so they will finish their charge like so, all in combat. So now going into the fight phase, let's begin with this squad of 6 Plague Drones, and they will first pile in. And all 6 will be able to fight. 7 attacks with their Plague Swords, hitting on 4s, getting 4 hits. Strength 4 versus toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, rerolling fails. Getting 2 wounds and 2 rerolls. Getting a 3rd wound, which will activate Locus of Virulence. So we have 2 1 damage attacks and 1 2 damage attack. No AP, so beginning with 1 3-up invulnerable save against the 2 damage attack, which will fail, and 2 3-up invulnerable saves against the 1 damage attacks, passing 1 and failing 1. So a total of 3 damage will go through. And so 1 Canoptic Wraith is killed off. Now for 24 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, getting 11 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, rerolling fails. Getting 6 wounds and 5 rerolls. And here's the rerolls. Getting 2 more wounds. And the wound roll of a 6 is 3 damage. The wound rolls of 5 are 2 damage. So beginning with the 1 3-up invulnerable save against the 3 damage attack, which passes. And then 7 3-up invulnerable saves against the 2 damage attacks, passing 6 and failing 1. So 1 Canoptic Wraith will fall from 3 starting wounds down to 1. Next, we will resolve this Great Unclean One with Corruption against the Immortals. Since he's down to 9 wounds, he only has 4 attacks base with Corruption, hitting on 2s, getting 4 hits. He is also down to a base strength of 6, but Corruption is plus 2 strength, so Strength 8 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 2s and rerolling thanks to the weapon. So 3 wounds, 1 reroll. And here's the reroll. Getting a 4th wound, minus 3 AP, so 4 6-up armor saves, passing 1 and failing 3. So 3 Immortals will go down. Also, before we forget, at the end of the charge phase, we should have rolled a dice for crushing bulk from the Great Unclean One. So on a 4-up, it will do a mortal wound, and it will not. So now D6 attacks from the Attendant's Claws and Teeth, getting 3 attacks, hitting on 2s, getting 3 hits. Strength 2 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 6s, rerolling 1s, getting 2 fails and a reroll. And here's the reroll. Still failing to wound. And now, after fighting, the Great Unclean One will consolidate up to 3 inches. Right to there. And so next we will resolve this Demon Prince against the 1 lone Immortal, and he will pile in first. And then he will place his attacks. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, thanks to himself, getting 7 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s. 4 wounds total at minus 2 AP means 4 5-up armor saves, passing 1 and failing 3. So the last Immortal will then be killed off, and then the Demon Prince will consolidate up to 3 inches into combat with the squad of warriors, like so. Finally, from the charging units, we will resolve this Demon Prince Nurgle with wings into the Ghost Arc. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s thanks to himself, getting 6 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 7th hit. Strength 7 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s, getting 5 wounds, and 1 of them will be plus 1 damage. Minus 2 AP, so 1 6-up armor save against the 3 damage attack, which will pass, and 4 6-up armor saves against the 2 damage attacks, passing 1, failing 3. And then thanks to Quantum Shielding, on rolls of 1, they are ignored, and he will ignore 1, but 2 will go through for 4 damage total. So this Ghost Arc will fall from 11 wounds down to 7. And now going into non-charging units, beginning with Nurgle, so the Great Unclean One will strike back against the Canoptic Wraiths. 4 attacks base with his Doomsday Bell now that he's back up to 5 wounds, hitting on 2s, getting 4 hits. Strength 7 with the Doomsday Bell against Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, getting 3 wounds. 2 of them will be Locus of Violence, so they will be D3 plus 1 damage. So first, 1 3-up invulnerable save against the D3 damage, which will pass, and then 2 3-up invulnerable saves against D3 plus 1 damage attacks, and passing both of those as well. Now for D6 attacks from the Attendant's Claws and Teeth, getting 1 attack, hitting on a 2, and it hits. Strength 2 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on a 6, and it wounds, and it will do 2 damage if it goes through. So 1 3-up invulnerable save, which passes. So now going over to the Necron units that are locked in combat, beginning with the Canoptic Wraiths. 2 will place their attacks onto the Great Unclean One in order to try to finish it off, and 1 will have to place its attacks into the Plague Drones. So beginning with 3 attacks from the Vicious Claws onto the Plague Drones, hitting on 3s, getting 3 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 2. And they are 2 damage apiece, but they have to be done separately because the damage will not carry over. So the strike number 1, 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, failing both, which will finish off the wounded Plague Drone. And then strike number 2, 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and failing both of those as well. So 1 more regular Plague Drone will fall from 4 starting wounds down to 2. Now for the 6 attacks onto the Great Unclean One, hitting on 3s, getting only 2 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s and failing to wound. The Black Ghost Arc will now strike back against the Demon Prince, and because he's been reduced to 7 wounds, he only gets D3 attacks, getting 3 attacks, hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit. Strength 6 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on a 4, and it wounds. 1 3-up armor save, which passes. And finally, the squad of 9 Necron warriors attacking back onto the Demon Prince. They unfortunately cannot really pile in because they cannot get any closer to the Great Unclean One, since they are not engaged with him. So only 7 of the 9 warriors will be able to attack. 7 attacks, hitting on 3s, hitting 7 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 3-up armor save, which passes. So going into the morale phase, the squad of Plague Drones lost 1 model this turn, and they have a leadership of 7, so it's impossible to fail. They are also within 6 inches of a greater demon and can use this leadership of 10, but they still have their demonic icon, so if they roll a 1, they will get the slain model back. And here's the roll. And they roll a 3, so nothing happens. Finally, the squad of Canoptic Rays lost 3 models this turn, but they have a leadership of 10, so it's impossible for them to fail. So now, taking a look at the tactical objective cards, thanks to those Plague Drones charging into the Canoptic Rays, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle now have more models within 3 inches of the center of Objective Marker 1 than the Necrons do, and no one has any troop choices within 3 inches of the center of that Objective Marker for priority, and because of that, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will successfully complete Secure Objective 1 for 1 victory point. Chaos Demons of Nurgle failed to complete Advance. They did, however, successfully complete Cycle of Life, thanks to killing both the Immortals and the Overlord, and because it was killed with a Nurgle demon unit, they will score D3 victory points. So here's the D3 roll, and they roll a 3, of course, and the Chaos Demons of Nurgle failed to complete Secure Objective 4 because there's still a squad of Necron warriors controlling it. And at this point, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will throw Advance away. And so at the end of Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 3, the score currently sits at 12 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle, thanks to achieving Slay the Warlord, and 5 victory points for the Necrons. Going into Necrons turn 4, a reminder that the Necrons have 0 command points available, and the Chaos Demons of Nurgle also have 0 command points available. A reminder that the Necrons held on to Dust and Ashes, Blood and Guts, and Secure Objective 6 from the previous turn, and because the Necrons are currently only controlling 2 objective markers, they drew 2 new tactical objective cards, and they drew Supremacy, score D3 victory points if you control any 3 objective markers at the end of your turn, and Secure Objective 4. Score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 4 at the end of your turn. And Objective Marker 6 is this one right here, currently being held by a squad of Plague Bearers. And Objective Marker 4 is over in this mess over here, currently being controlled by a squad of Necron Warriors. At the beginning of the turn, of course, thanks to Living Metal, this Ghost Arc will go back up from 7 wounds to 8. And we will roll for reanimation protocols to see if the 1 warrior missing from this squad comes back. And he will come back on a 5-up, and he will not. And at this point, the Necrons will concede the game. So because of that, thanks to this Great Unclean One and the Plague Drones, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will score Linebreaker, and the Necrons will successfully score Secure Objective 4 for 1 victory point. And so because of that, we will have a major victory for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle, thanks to a concession from the Necrons at the beginning of Necrons turn 4. And we will also have a final score in terms of victory points of 6 victory points for the Necrons and 13 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle. So now that it's been announced that we have a major victory for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle thanks to a concession from the Necrons at the beginning of Necrons turn 4, with a final score of 13-6 in Nurgle's favor when it comes to victory points, I can go over 1 or 2 of my final thoughts on this game. First and foremost, of course, is the major reason for concession, and I think it's pretty obvious from where everything is on the board, but the Necrons have just lost too much in order to stay in this fight. And not only that, but they have also fallen too far behind in victory points to be able to catch up, because out of the 4 other tactical objective cards that the Necrons currently have active, the only one that is actually doable is Blood and Guts, but they would have to be very lucky in the fight phase with their Canoptic Raids against the Great Unclean One in order to achieve that, because that's really the only realistic way that they would do that. But as we saw from the previous fight phase, the 2 Canoptic Raids that could attack the Great Unclean One, or they proceeded to do no damage. And I don't really see any reason why that would change. Not only that, but unless somehow the Canoptic Raids are able to kill off 3 or 4 of those Plague Drones this fight phase, which would of course mean that one of the Canoptic Raids attacking the Great Unclean One would have to attack the Plague Drones instead. Unless they killed off 3 or 4 of those Plague Drones, Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to be able to draw 4 new tactical objective cards at the start of their next turn, and that's assuming the squad of warriors over on this flank is still alive and holding objective marker 4. If that squad of warriors stays in combat and gets killed off, then technically Nurgle is holding it, because the Ghost Ark isn't within 3 inches of the center of that objective marker. Now, it would be all up to the Demon Prince, of course, to kill 9 models, which is not likely. It's actually impossible. However, he could possibly kill 7, and then they fail a morale check to lose the other 2, but most likely not going to happen. But while that might not happen this turn, the problem is next turn, there's a Great Unclean One with 9 wounds right there ready to charge into things. So while this flank is not lost yet, it is probably a turn away from being lost, depending on how the dice rolls. And as we've seen throughout this game, the dice have not been overly kind to the Necrons. So unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. I will say the Necrons put up about as good of a fight as they possibly could have this game. In fact, I'm quite impressed with the fact that they did manage to actually kill off Rodigus. They did kill off a full Plague Drone squad, and they caused some wounds to some other units. But the fact that they weren't able to finish the deal and kill off the Great Unclean One with Plague Flail, who was in combat with the Canoptic Raids, caused massive problems because that Great Unclean One ended up killing off the Overlord. And so while the Necrons did a good amount of work, they didn't do quite enough. I think at the beginning of the game, when they went first and were able to pump every little bit of firepower they had, short of 2 warrior squads, into Rodigus right away. No Miasma of Pestilence, they were able to use Methodical Destruction, and all they did was kill off 10 wounds out of his 18, and failed to kill him for first blood and slay the Warlord right away. I think that really set the tone for the game. So, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this battle report, and stay tuned for the next one.